Hi there, this is episode 76 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International, and my name is Ian Willoughby. My guest this time is somebody I'd wanted to speak to for an extremely long time, architect Jakub Cigler. In fact, Jakub is perhaps the architect of post-1989 Prague. His Jakub Cigler Architekti are behind the ongoing remodelling of Wencelsas Square, and they've also designed such buildings as Quadrio, Florentinum, and the park in Chodov. The studio is also involved in the massive project to overhaul Masaryk train station and the surrounding area. I spoke to Jakub Cigler, who's 61, at his company's offices in the Podolí district for this edition of Prague Talk. You grew up in Malá Strana. How was that?
It was basically the village in the very center of Prague. In my childhood, there was no tourist, I would say, at all, because Western countries were completely isolated from us, or opposite, we were isolated from them. And so, as I said, it was the village where there were mostly the old people and very old-fashioned way of living. There was the gas lamps. And I was born in a relatively new built house. It was from 1938. So it was slightly different experience than what, for example, my schoolmates from the elementary school, when I visited them, that they had kind of, very, very, very simple, very primitive kind of, I would say, medieval standards, And since that, wherever I lived outside Malá Strana, I was always kind of starving. So after a couple of years of living in other districts of Prague, I basically bought the flat and I'm living there now again. And so it's very different, but it's possible to find the places where it is kind of still old Malá Strana,
What was it that drew you to architecture in the beginning?
I didn't realize that it has some influence, to be born in this place. But during the years, I realized that, how much deep influence it has to be born in a nice environment, in the middle of the fascinating architecture designed by the best Italian, German, Czech architects, so from, let's say, Gothic period or Romanesque till through the Baroque, till even the functionalistic buildings. So it's very full of very original architecture, and it was very inspiring.
After you graduated from the Czech Technical University in the late 80s, you went to London where you worked at Future Systems with Jan Kaplický. How did you get to London before 89, and how did you get to work with Kaplický?
I must say, to be honest, I feel as a very lucky person because I was born in a nice place. I was born in the family, artistic family, because my both parents are sculptors, and all friends, and this all environment of all relatives and so on was very special, and therefore it was no coincidence that my parents were friends with Jan Kaplický, even he emigrated and lived abroad, but they kept the contact with him. And when he found out that I'm studying architecture, so he was very helpful. He was sending me a lot of magazines and books about architecture. So I was kind of lucky to go to study architecture already prepared, somehow, differently than my schoolmate though. And later in late 80s, he invited me to London to help him as work on the competition for Bibliothèque Nationale de Paris, or de France, sorry. It was international competition organized for François Mitterrand. it was amazing experience, and in the end the Future Systems proposal was second, so got second prize. So it was kind of fascinating for me, to be all of a sudden from communist Prague, to work in London and on such an important project.
Well, Jan Klipicki did a lot of amazing designs, but didn't actually see that many of his buildings or his designs for buildings realized. Did you, in a way, learn from him how not to do things, how to be more effective and get things actually built?
I don't know whether I learned from him. I was very enthusiastic about his, let's say, high-tech style of architecture in that time, and so he influenced my early years a lot. But he was a very introvert person, and therefore he had a kind of hard time, to work with client. And I think that one thing is to be talented architect, but there is also very important to be communicative, and this was maybe his kind of weaker part, and there for him was very important relation with his wife Amanda Levitt, and she kind of helped him very much later in 90s and in coming years to complete a couple of very important projects which were very influential for wall architecture, I would say, and I think it was influenced even a lot of other architects, say too.
You have been running your own studio in Prague for a couple of decades now. One of your big projects has been the remodeling of Wencelsas Square. What was your basic concept for Wencelsas Square?
The Wencelsas Square is a public space which was the market, and it's approximately 700 years old and changed many times during this long time. And this, let's say, form of the square, which was realized during the socialism, reflected the way of, which is not contemporary, which was kind of problematic as a public space in the very center of Prague. And there was a competition in 2005, which we as office won. And since that we are struggling with the many mayors and many clerks in the city to finish it, because it's in these days, it's very, I would say, very complicated to get the agreement of all public institutions and kind of entire society. And I think it's very significant for this project that it takes so long. But the aim was to widen the sidewalks, to increase the public spaces, for the pedestrians, and decrease the, let's say, the areas, which is dedicated to cars, to bring the tram back, which was already, many years ago was there, and to access more easily this space, which is kind of almost kilometer long for the public, which is, living around and staying around.
Well, already it looks a lot better, especially the bottom part. Are you optimistic that it can be revived in such a way that it's actually a place that people want to go again?
It's a very interesting point. When we were, during these 18 years were preparing the project, I was wondering whether it will change also the way of life on the square. And of course, you can't never be sure, what will happen. And now, let's say after a couple of months of already, this lower part be finished, there is already visible that this part has different life than the upper part. And also I have some information that even the rents in the neighborhood buildings are increasing because there is a bigger interest for the shops to be there, the quality shops, and so it means that it will be hand to hand with the other changes. And I think it's, for me, looking backward, kind of fascinating that the, let's say, change of the sidewalks, the pavement, and bringing some more trees and some water features can really change the life on this space, so much. And this is what I want to underline, that architects sometimes concentrate or focusing mostly to the designing the building, but I would say maybe even more important is designing the space around these buildings.
You've been involved in many major projects in Prague, including Quadrio, the park in Chodov, Florentinum. Which of those are you particularly proud of?
I am proud of all of them. It's like if I have 6 kids, and I can't say which I like more. The park on Chodov was for me very important. It was kind of school which taught me, how to deal with the public space, how to deal with the landscaping. It was, the part of our profession which wasn't very much taught in the schools, my days. And I'm not sure, whether it is already now, enough. The students are kind of taught enough in the schools these days, and we had very skilled client, so it was amazing project, in the middle of nowhere, or next to the highway, kind of abandoned space, and you all of a sudden you have this street full of people. You can hear there a lot of languages. There are people eating on those parks, and it's kind of life which wasn't there at all, and I'm very enthusiastic. I'm very happy about it. That it was possible to be participating on this project.
What is your involvement in the project to revitalize and build new buildings at the Masaryk train station?
We are local architects for Zaha Hadid from London. And this building is, will be finished in a couple of months. I think it's a great achievement, and also, I think it's a very, let's say, great job also from the investor from Penta, which decided, to invite international architect for doing this project in Prague, and in adjacent area, above the railway station, we designing the new public space, which is pretty large. It will be size of approximately of Malostranské náměstí on Malá Strana. And I think it's for me it's a very important project, because to create in Prague 1, in very center of the city, new public space which didn't exist, and this area was kind of dividing the city to the area around Hybernecká Street and railway station on one side, and other side the area around Florence bus station. So this covering of the railroad will create not only the public space but also the kind of hub where 3 stations connected together, and the access will be very very easy. So I think it is very project which I think is. Will be important for and changing the life in the center of Prague.
Doesn't this project also envisage or count on the fact that there will be a fast train from the airport? The airport train is a kind of evergreen of Prague. It's been talked about for years. Is it actually going to happen?
I don't have this crystal ball, but I think sooner or later it will happen. The question is whether this train will go from airport to the Masaryk station or somewhere else. But definitely, I think it's important that it's not connecting only the airport, but also the lot of other places in Prague surroundings. And it's important that to educate people to use more and more the trains, and with trains coming, to and traveling to the center of Prague, and therefore I think the Masaryk station is a great station, because you are, immediately in the heart of Prague. It's better. You can get better access than with the main railway station, which is kind of a bit, disconnected from the center. So I think that the Masaryk station will always keep kind of very important position, and I think it's very good that Czech railroad authorities, keeping this station, alive.
People say that the planning process or the process of getting planning permission is super slow in Prague. How does that affect your work?
It's affect a lot because it's not possible to base the business of the studio only on a couple of projects, but it's necessary to keep the range of projects, and to be able flexibly react to the slowing down in some time schedules. And I think it's a very difficult illness, but I don't believe it will change. I think it is the reflection of the current status of our society, which doesn't understand what is democracy, and democracy is understood as that the fact that everybody can influence everything, and I think it is kind of, as I said, let's say, illness which is will take time, to improve, and this new law, construction law, I'm afraid it will not improve anything. Maybe it will be even worse as usual. So I think the human beings are flexible, and we are able to cope with these problems, and I think it's necessary to try to improve it, but also to be able to cope with the current status.
You have said in the past that the demolition of the brutalist Transgas building in the centre of Prague was the right thing to do. But as you know, many people were upset about that. This is a big issue in Prague. Should these communist eras be preserved or demolished?
I think it is not possible to say yes or no. I think it's every period of time left in Prague or everywhere quality buildings and not quality buildings. These buildings definitely was interesting. It was as a piece of architecture, but the Transgas building as a solitaire in the structure of a block, urban block system, of Vinohrady, was very not connected with the pattern of the city in this area, and I convinced kind of easily the monumental department to get the approval for our new proposal, because this Transgas building never created the living kind of environment. It was a dead place, and was a place where was kind of abandoned from normal public life, and therefore I think it is good that it was demolished. I admire a lot of buildings from this era, and I think there, for example, the tower on Ještěd, or the building in neighborhood, this Federal Parliament, which is now the National Museum, the new part of National Museum. I think they are great achievements, but this building was not great, and even the author realized that it's not the building which must stay in the city. So I think it's necessary to openly discuss with the experts, which building is, let's say, adequate to keep and eventually protect, and which is better to be replaced, and this discussion, which is kind of not unmature in Prague, because the people are kind of looking only, what date was built and whether it is brutalist, okay, so it's good, but it doesn't mean that it must be good if it is brutalist.
Imagine a situation, I can somehow give you some almost magical power to improve Prague, or just kind of freedom to do what you think is the right thing to do. What would you do to make the city better?
I think this city is great, and it doesn't need much, and I think that the public spaces should be improved, and if I would have this magical power, I would plant a lot of trees in the streets. I think it's kind of simple, easy, but it's very important.
Wouldn't you then have less parking spaces and more people angry that they can't park?
I think that to park the car on the street is not the human right, and I struggling with my car, to park my car, almost every day on Malastrana, and it teach me, it's teaching me that to use the public transport and trams instead of commute from my office to my home and back. And I think this is about the kind of changing of habits, and so on. So I think that we think that the cars are absolute necessity, but it's not so much true.
I guess more than any other architect, maybe you have helped to transform Prague in the last 30 years or so. What's your feeling when you drive around and you see these buildings and you think, I did that one, I did that one?
It's great, but it's, of course, I ask myself, in relation to Transgas, maybe in some years some of these buildings will be demolished because I made some mistake, or I would be happy one day if somebody say this building should stay. So this is kind of big question, whether we make the things right, and sometimes it's necessary to question ourselves, whether what we are doing, properly and so on. I must admit that I am changing my opinion. I was very big enthusiast about the high-tech architecture. Now I'm promoting very much using the wood and stone and the sustainable materials, because we are responsible, the building industry is responsible for 40% of CO2 emissions, which is from long term unacceptable. So the architects has big responsibility to also participate more on the sustainability of the future.
Many thanks indeed to Jakub Cigler, who I met in May 2023 for episode 76 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. There are, of course, dozens, scores more editions available, so why not listen to a few and subscribe wherever you yourself get your podcasts. But from me, Ian Willoughby, thank you so much for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.